Okay, today I'm going to go over my absolute favorite part of my class that I call How Does This Fit Through That? Because it seems a little crazy, but I promise you there are some amazing processes that take place. We're not alone. Yes, mom's body unfolds, but baby very helpfully folds up. So, first I'm going to go over the work that baby does to help us, and then we'll go over mom's body. And I don't expect anybody to remember all of this. I think that just having the information at one point alleviates a lot of fear, kind of plants that seed of how these processes happen. So as we're going through them, there's a little bit of sense in there that, like, okay, this makes sense. Okay, I see why my body's craving that, and it just kind of helps empower us to follow our body, listen to our body, and understand that we are not facing an impossible task. And I know we rationally know babies are born every day, but when we're in it, it is like, how is this happening? So we're going to go over that today, but I promise you really don't have to memorize all of this. Baby is going to be probably like the most complicated for me to explain and for you to remember, but I guarantee you really don't have to remember this. So we're just going to try to understand it once. So we have this narrow pelvis to navigate, but I promise there is space. There is a ligament here, here, and here that stretch. We'll go over that more later. The inlet, the top opening of the pelvis is more, it's wider left to right, and when we get to that pubic arch there to here, it actually becomes wider front to back. So baby is going to twist and move and turn like a key in a lock to wiggle their way through. So during pregnancy, the generally ideal position for baby is facing slightly towards the back of mom's side. There are a lot of variations of normal, including breech, but for today's purposes, we're just going to go over standard. So the first of the 7 cardinal movements of birth is engagement. That's when baby becomes engaged in the pelvis. And that can happen before labor. And then we begin descent, which can begin before labor as well, and then continues to progress throughout labor. As baby descends further into the pelvis, that pressure from the cervix causes them to flex. That's flexion. It gets them to tuck their chin to their chest. And you'll see that is because the widest part of our head here, that's not where we want to have baby come out. We want them to come out crown first. They're crowning. So if I'm going to pull a shirt over my head, and remember this for toddlers, we're going to go crown all the way down because that is the smallest space to fit over our head. So baby's going to flex their chin, and this baby is too big for that pelvic model because it's not made to fold up. So we're going to use this one for the rest. So they've now flexed their chin to their chest, and as they get to that pelvic inlet, they're going to make an internal rotation and hopefully face mom's spine. If you've heard of a sunny side up baby, that means they're born face up, and that is the cause of true back labor, which isn't necessarily fun, but posterior babies are not necessarily out of position. If we have done everything we can to make space in our pelvis for that posterior baby to turn, it's possible that that is just the best fit for our particular pelvis. I don't want anyone thinking that their baby is in the wrong position, because we don't know what is the wrong or right position for each unique person's body. So we make space and then we work with what we've got. So after that internal rotation, which gives them that space for that front to back area in the pelvis to have more room, there is then extension. That's when that flexion of tucking the chin changes to an extension, because their face is going to be born. It's going to come out under that pubic arch, and they're going to be born sticking their head up. And at that point, we have an external rotation, which we sometimes hear called restitution. That is where that baby who has been born facing mom's spine now kind of takes a pause and turns to face one of mom's thighs. That is so that their shoulder can come out one at a time, thank goodness. So we have the anterior shoulder comes first, followed by the posterior shoulder. And this is the part where shoulder dystocia can happen, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And finally, after each shoulder comes through, that is expulsion, and baby is out and in mom's arms. So, shoulder dystocia. We hear that with big babies, but the reality is that a mom can have a big baby and no shoulder dystocia, and then with her next one, a smaller baby, shoulder dystocia. It is not that the baby does not fit. It is that shoulder getting hung up on mom's pelvic bone. And there are different techniques to work with that. And I just learned an interesting one. So McRoberts is a position that is generally used where mom's knees are essentially brought up to her armpits to flex that pelvic space. And there's an alternative version of that Gaskin maneuver where mom is flipped over onto her hands and knees. That motion is actually part of what helps it. And then it's not just hands and knees, it's pushing back, like similar to child's pose. And that is also flexing the legs at the hip there. But I haven't had a chance to look further into this. This is just interesting information. A midwife who worked in Europe for a long time in hospitals said that in the hospitals she worked at, McRoberts was not a stationary position, that the whole purpose is to wiggle the pelvis to free baby's shoulder. And so I'm actually gonna demonstrate it. They said that they did 3 rounds of leg pumps with the flexion and extension of mom's legs. So if mom's legs are being flexed up to the pelvis, then extending them lower, and let's move that, was getting that extra tilt to the pelvis. So they would do 3 rounds of 3 pumps. So it would be 1, extend, 2, extend, 3, extend, and then rest and see if that shoulder slips through. And a contraction doesn't matter at that point, it's just freeing the shoulder. So if they got past the 3rd round of 3 pumps of their legs, they would change their method and work on some other methods of resolving shoulder dystocia. So when learning about that, we thought, okay, well, if Gaskin maneuver is essentially the other side of McRoberts, I'm going to show you that one too, I suppose. So that would be, Gaskin maneuver is back. So you see we've got knees to armpits there. And we thought, okay, well, if the extension is pelvis forward, perhaps this variation of cobra child's pose would be the alternative that gets gravity working on our side. So that is just some interesting thing that I learned. Again, I heard this from one single person, and I'm not sharing this information with you as a medical provider. It's just, I still think as an expectant parent, that's really fascinating. So, aside from all of those fun little twists and turns, babies' heads have these plates. Their skull has plates. They haven't fused together, and they overlap, and you'll see molding. Your baby might have a cone head, and that will resolve a few hours or days after birth. But they literally fold up right at their little skull. So they fold up and they twist their way out, and it's super helpful. So our job is to listen to our body and what it tells us that it needs to be less uncomfortable, which is what is giving us more room and space for our baby. So let's go back to mom's pelvis. So here we have these lovely ligaments, and we have this amazing cocktail of hormones that happens, and we all talk about oxytocin. That's the hormone that causes contractions. It's also the love hormone. We need to feel safe and secure and loved. That will help get oxytocin flowing and get those contractions strong and regular. But that's not the only one, and we don't talk about the others, but they are pretty amazing. So my favorite is relaxin, and that can make pregnancy uncomfortable. It can make it a little bit painful to walk, hard to turn over in bed at night. Your pubic bone might hurt, especially as you get close to labor. But when we go into spontaneous labor, as opposed to induced labor, we get a huge surge of relaxin hormone. And in an induced labor, we don't get that. We have a replacement for oxytocin. We call it Pitocin. We don't have a replacement for that relaxin surge. So my question is, when we induce solely for a baby we suspect might be too large, are we making it harder to push that baby out because these ligaments don't have enough space, or don't have as much space to stretch as they would have if our body had already had that natural surge of relaxin hormone from a spontaneous labor? Something to think about, something I certainly wonder about. So after that relaxin surge happens, it kind of loosens up our pelvis, but that is very helpful in birth, even though it's uncomfortable in pregnancy. So we do get room to stretch here and here and here. And our sacrum right here and our tailbone, this tailbone, it moves. When we lay on our, not just on our back, but that semi-reclining position, all that pressure on our tailbone is pushing it right into that pelvic opening. And that's where we want the most room. And even with an epidural, we can lie on our side to give that space to open up. And we can get assistance to, say use a squat bar, for example. So even that doesn't completely prevent us from taking advantage of our tailbone's ability to move out of the way rather than pushing it into the way. It can make a difference of about 20% in size, so I think that's definitely worth considering. So let's move on. The uterine muscles, each contraction is pulling the uterine muscles up and forward, and if you look at an image of the uterus and cervix, the cervix starts out thick and it shortens. That's effacement. And then it eventually opens. That's dilation. It's not opening like a trap door. What's happening is those muscles are gathering upwards, and just like pulling a turtleneck over your head. So if this is cervix, you're pulling that shirt down. The turtleneck's getting shorter before it starts to open, and then it opens over your head. And that all is happening because you're pulling it down. This is just the reverse. Your cervix is that turtleneck. We're pulling up to pull it shorter and gradually open. So gravity is definitely going to be our friend or our foe. Lying back, we're working against gravity. We have gravity here, and all of our muscles are trying to pull And that's why you'll notice a lot of women tend to labor like this. They want to lean forward. They want to lean over the couch. They want to lean over a birth ball. And that lean is letting gravity pull forward and pull up without as much exertion on the part of our muscles. So we can definitely work with that. Then we have the vagina. This is the part people get really scared about, and you hear comparisons that I hate, like we're trying to push a watermelon out of our nostril, but watermelons don't fold up, and nostrils are not made to open. And we also hear fears about women thinking that, or even men thinking that a vagina is going to be all stretched out after the birth of a baby. And although there are injuries that happen, they can be healed, and pelvic floor physical therapy is a wonderful tool, but we're not designed to be injured. We are designed to unfold. So if you have ever seen a diagram or felt inside of a vagina, you might see that there are ridges, and what that is overlapping muscles. It's called rugae, and you might recognize something familiar from that. There's ruching in a lot of maternity shirts. The material is folded and sewn together with elastic so that it's not a baggy shirt while your belly is small, but as it grows, it gradually stretches to expand. That's not stretching the material beyond capacity, it's just gradually unfolding it to capacity. So this is my model of a vagina. You will never look at this toy the same again. We are so used to acknowledging that a penis can change size, but we don't get to see a woman's vagina change size, but that is what happens. We might be familiar if we think about it. On average, a woman's vagina dilates about 2 inches in diameter from arousal. So if you have any experience with starting sex without much foreplay, you might realize like, oh, it's a bit tight and uncomfortable, and then we relax. Or perhaps there was foreplay and you were already relaxed and ready. Well, that impressive feat gets even more impressive in labor. Hormones are a big factor, just like they are with arousal, and it's not just the baby's head coming through that opens mom's body, but those vaginal muscles unfold in labor to their complete size. So I'm not saying that it is comfortable, I'm not saying that there is no feeling of stretch, but I'm telling you that you're not stretched beyond capacity. It is nothing like being your normal folded up self and then just bam, baby's coming out. There is an unfolding, and the good news is those muscles fold back up. You are not stretched out, you are not ruined. These body parts are there, designed with this amazing purpose. They unfold, they fold back up. You're made to have a baby, and even when things don't quite work out, that doesn't mean that there is a design flaw. It means exterior factors took hold, and that's all right. You know, a key in a lock put in the wrong direction, can't wiggle and get in there, that doesn't mean the lock was broken. I don't want anyone to think that somehow their body is broken because their process of labor didn't unfold the way that it was designed to. That is not your body failing you. There are so many factors that affect that, but understanding what those factors are that are in place, biologically speaking, can help us make sense of things, both when they're happening physiologically normally and when they veer off course. And I hope that you take this information and know that when they veer off course, that is absolutely not a time for self-blame or to think that something is wrong with you or your body. So finally, we are going to talk about the kind of scary one, vaginal opening, those tissues, that is still a part of that vaginal rugae, and it's still a part of that unfolding. But there is a thing that happens in labor that not everyone prepares you for, and you may not have heard about yet. But as you are pushing, you may notice that baby is, as you bear down, baby is moving and coming out, and as you rest, they go back in a little bit. It's kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So they're not moving all the way backwards, I promise, but they might be coming out here and coming back to here, and then they're out to here, and then they're back to here. And finally they pass through and crown and are born, and we're getting some relief. So that 1 step back can be discouraging, but I promise it is helping you. The vaginal opening, just getting stretched all at once, we don't want that. We want there to be time for blood flow. So we want a little stretch and release, a little stretch and release, and we keep gradually stretching this tissue. It's not all at once, and that's okay. I know we want to get it over with, but it is worth the process that we are doing, because we are not designed to tear. It's true, we can heal from a tear, but let's try to avoid that. There's no dotted line to cut on. There's no magic place that we're meant to break. So if we're patient and understand why this is happening, it may be less frustrating that baby slips back in a little bit. Again, you're not 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and it is serving a purpose. And you see how much more I've stretched this candy peach ring than that other one. So, weird reminder, you may never look at peach rings again the same way, but it was worth it. So finally, I do want to get back to hormones really, really quickly. There is one hormone that I think is underrated. We definitely don't talk about it, and it doesn't have so much of an effect on mom's body opening, or I don't know if I mentioned that as that turtleneck and that those muscles gather up to the top, that fundal height there, that fundus is getting thicker, that the muscle is gathering up, it's getting thicker, and it's kind of pushing baby down along with it, kind of like squeezing out a tube of toothpaste. So that's one other nice helper that we have. But hormones, we know we need lovey-dovey hormones to help our body contract and open up and get that baby out. And then there's transition. I think that the scary thing about transition is a lack of understanding. There are 2 things that are going on. You are in between 2 worlds. You're in between, I need to labor and I need to not fight it, relax into it as much as that's possible. I need to let this wash over me and happen. It's a submissive state. You are surrendering to your body, to your contractions. Well, then there's pushing, and that's not a passive state, that's an active state. You're actively pushing into your contractions and pushing your baby down and out. But then there's this in-between time where you go, well, what was helping me cope here, it's not helping anymore, but I'm not quite pushing. You may notice you're pushy. If you relax your bottom, you might notice that you're getting a little grunty, and that's okay to let your bottom bear down a little bit and actually help dilation. We don't want to add force. When people say don't push before you're fully dilated, that is don't add force. Let your body do what it needs to do. If that is relaxing your bottom, you're just in an in-between state, and that's okay. But we start to feel fear. Well, it's not working anymore, but I'm not pushing. And then you go, I can't do this much longer because now my coping mechanism is not helping. And that's a time to go, oh, maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe this is transition. Maybe I'm almost done. The other thing that's happening that causes that fear is actually a surge of stress hormone called catecholamine. And I love and hate that stuff. It is incredible. So a lot of times you'll hear moms say, I don't know what happened, the pain just got so bad I started shaking, I was trembling, and it's like shivers. That is stress hormone. That's our body's response to stress hormone, is to shiver and shake. And instead of being fearful and thinking that is because of pain, if we recognize, oh, I just got a huge surge of stress hormone, I'm safe, I'm okay, it's not from the pain, I'm in transition, I'm getting close to pushing, there's my light at the end of the tunnel, I'm almost done. That in itself is such a huge relief to just be able to identify that. But those catecholamines serve a great purpose. No matter how exhausted we are, how drowsy we are, that we're just falling asleep in between contractions and we have no energy left. We've been in labor a long time perhaps. That rush of catecholamine hormone wakes us up completely. There's no, well, if I don't get a nap, I'm not going to have the energy to push. You are going to have the energy to push because your body is going to give you a surge of hormones. This is the same kind of thing when a mom lifts a car off of her child. That superhero strength is catecholamine rushing through your body, and you're going to get a nice hefty dose of that in labor, especially if it's an unmedicated labor. But no matter what, that is going to happen, and it's giving mom the energy and the strength to push, but it's also protecting the baby's brain and heart from the pressures of the birth canal. So this is a wonderful thing that can be distressing at first, but once we recognize it, we can rationalize a little bit out of it and go, okay, I'm scared because of a hormone, I'm safe. Oh, okay, I'm shaking, that's a sign that we're almost done. So I think that for myself, if I start shivering and I'm not cold, I go, okay, good, we're almost done, we're almost through. So that is my favorite indicator that we're almost to baby time, and all of this hard work is about to pay off. So that is my absolute favorite topic in my birth class. It's how does this baby fit through my pelvis? And I'll tell you one thing, all these factors combine, baby having to twist and wiggle out, and we need to give that baby space in our pelvis. The best way to wiggle into a tight pair of jeans is to wiggle. You don't pull them straight up. That's really hard. You wiggle into those jeans, and the best way to get a baby out is to wiggle that baby out. Move and twist and turn in your labor. You don't have to stay in one position to push. You can do gymnastics all over the room and wiggle that baby out. Let that baby wiggle out. This is a dynamic, moving thing, and it is so much easier when we remember that and we try our best to not keep it stationary. We'll have a much, much easier and faster labor if we keep that motion involved. So I hope that helps make this a little bit less intimidating. And although I know you won't remember this in the throes of labor, I hope maybe you have that moment of, maybe this would feel better if I wiggle around, if I lean forward, if I change positions. And I certainly hope that if you get the transition shakes, that you don't fear it, that you find relief in the sign that you are almost done with this work. If you have any questions, let me know. It's my favorite thing to do. I'm always happy to answer questions or talk through some fears. It's never a bother. It's my favorite thing. So I hope this helps, and I hope you have a wonderful and happy birth and a happy, healthy baby.